Welcome to Behind the Headlines, the weekly news roundup from Utah Public Radio and the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm Tom Williams. Today I'm broadcasting from the USU campus in Moab, and the program will feature Salt Lake Tribune reporters along with a reporter from the Moab Times Independent. Here are some of the headlines we'll be talking about. Utah Governor Spencer Cox campaigns on a graveside visit with former President Trump at Arlington National Cemetery, a move federal law prohibits. A lawmaker posts a video of Utah Muslims observing tradition. His followers piled on with Islamophobia. Utah students could soon be prohibited from using smartphones during the school day. And the city of Moab eyes costs in the tens of millions to address flooding. And so joining me today are Salt Lake Tribune State Watch reporter Emily Anderson-Stern. Emily, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Appreciate it. Education reporter Carmen Nesbitt will be joining us soon. We look forward to having her. Later in the program, we'll be talking with Moab Times independent reporter Andrew Christiansen. And we have with us news columnist Robert Gerke. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Hey, good to be here, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you. Looks like Carmen is joining us here. So let's start with you, Emily. I want to talk first about this graveside visit. It's gotten a lot of national news as well as news here in Utah. So former President Trump and I guess Governor Cox, this started, I think, with an invitation from a family of a fallen soldier to come and be with them at the Arlington National Cemetery. Tell us about this.
Right. So, a few years ago, in Afghanistan, as the U.S. was withdrawing from Afghanistan, there's a suicide bombing at the Kabul airport, and there were 13 U.S. troops killed, and among them was a Marine named Darren Taylor Hoover from Utah. And so earlier this week, there was a memorial service, and Staff Sergeant Hoover's family invited President Trump and Governor Cox to come to the service. Where the controversy starts is that, apparently former President Trump invited some of his campaign staff to come and take photo and video. And under the Hatch Act, passed in the 1930s, political activity isn't allowed on the grounds of Arlington National Cemetery, where, many of the U.S. military's fallen dead, buried.
There was apparently reports are there was an altercation there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so on Tuesday evening, NPR actually first reported that there'd been an altercation between a cemetery official and a member of Trump's campaign staff, when Trump's campaign staff brought a photographer and videographer and tried to, take photos and video there. The cemetery official said, hey, we had, this is according to the cemetery, and the U.S. Army the cemetery had notified everyone that, hey, political activity won't be allowed here, campaign activity won't be allowed here, even though, President Trump is running to go back to the White House this November. And obviously, Governor Cox is running for re-election. They've notified everybody of that, they say. And so, a videographer and photographer come anyway. Cemetery official said, hey, we, had said that you can't do this. And according to reports from NPR, the videographer, photographer pushed past the cemetery official and filmed anyway. And so, the cemetery official filed a report. Apparently they decided not to press charges. But that's where, this came from.
So apparently Governor Cox's re-election campaign used some of this footage in donation invitations.
Yeah, so after Governor Cox appeared with President Trump at Arlington National Cemetery, he used some of the photos taken there of the two together, of them both with Sergeant Hoover's family, to essentially, there was a campaign email that went out Wednesday morning, and it had a photo of them, and it talked about him being there with Trump and saying that, to honor these fallen troops, that, that they need to that essentially that he talked about, to honor them, we need to, quote, commit ourselves to the principles they fought for. And then it asked for donations. There was a donation button underneath. And so, that's frustrated. I've heard from a number of people who have family members, a number of Utahns who have family members buried in Arlington National Cemetery, who have been frustrated with that. But I also talked to Sergeant Hoover's dad yesterday, and he said that he feels frustrated that this has become such a big issue, because he supports Governor Cox in his reelection campaign, and he also supports former President Trump. And he said they invited them, and he's fine if they do that.
What does Governor Cox's campaign say about this? I think the governor said this was a mistake to send this out as part of a campaign donation invitation.
Right. Hours after they'd sent out the email, after I'd reached out to them, and I am sure other reporters reached out to them, they sent out an apology email to supporters, saying that it should have never been sent, and that honoring those who serve should never be political. And so, we haven't seen an apology from the Trump campaign, but that is something that Governor Cox did send out.
And at the very end of the story here, Governor Cox, in an about face, has endorsed President Trump for re-election.
Right, that was a big surprise last month, and when Governor Cox decided to endorse President Trump. He's previously been one of the most critical Republican governors of President Trump, and he, earlier in this election cycle, had said that he likely wouldn't support Trump, that he would support, a candidate from whichever party who wasn't, the candidates running when it was just President Joe Biden and former President Trump. But last month, and I will know this was before President Joe Biden decided to step away from his re-election campaign, Governor Cox announced that he would actually be supporting former President Trump to be elected again.
Emily, hold on. I want to talk to you about another story, but I want to get Robert Gerke's commentary. What do you think about this story, Robert?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who's been to Arlington recognizes sort of the somber and reverent tone that is, that prevails there, and so that's why we have this prohibition on political campaigning and political campaign events there. So there's a reason for it, and it's to maintain that reverence and honor the people who are buried there. And so, it's in incredibly poor taste, I think, for President Trump and for Governor Cox to use this in a political way that they have. With respect to Sergeant Hoover's father, I mean, just because he invited them there doesn't mean that they can have a free for all on political activities. The rules exist for a reason. And so, it's also unfortunate, like Sergeant Hoover's father said, like that this has become such a media circus, because the purpose obviously was to mark a solemn occasion and to do it with due respect. And so, but we've seen this over and over again from President Trump, a disregard for the rules, a disrespect for the military and the military members who've died. And so, Not too surprising from the Trump campaign, maybe a little bit more surprising from Governor Cox's campaign. I guess at least, Governor Cox has acknowledged his campaign email was a mistake. So, trying to make that right. But, it's a recurring theme from President Trump.
Let's return to Statewatch reporter Emily Anderson Stern. Emily had another story along with Robert. The headline: Lawmaker posts video of Utah Muslims observing tradition. His followers piled on with Islamophobia. This is Representative Trevor Lee. What did he post?
So he posted a video of a group of Muslim women and children who were recognizing a tradition called Arba'in, which is the end of Ashura. And they, were walking around in Taylorsville, likely it was in the neighborhood of the Al Rasul Islamic Center. But Representative Trevor Lee posted these women and children. Women were wearing black chadors, which is, a traditional Shiite clothing, and children were carrying flags to commemorate Hussein, the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, which is what Arba'in was recognizing the death of Hussein. And he posted it without any sort of context of what they were doing, and just said, in the small town of Taylorsville, Utah. And then he replied to the post and said, quote, "Not a single American flag in sight."
Yeah, so that's what he added, right? Then a lot of comments, I guess, on all sides. Tell me about what people commented. This essentially went viral. What were people saying?
Well, some of the initial comments were from, his own followers. And many of those were filled with Islamophobic remarks, some hateful stuff being said about the Muslim community here in Utah. Some called Islam a, quote, demonic ideology. And there was a lot of, xenophobic remarks saying that the people should be sent back from where they came from. But there, later on, there were a number of people, a number of Utahns, and, I will say a lot of them were from both sides of the aisle here in Utah. You saw Republicans, Democrats, people from various political backgrounds calling Representative Lee out and saying that for him to post that video without any context was xenophobic, and they said it wasn't a good move for him to single out the Muslim women and children and then make them a target for some of the comments that followed.
Let's see. The Council on American Islamic Relations weighed in. What did they say?
Yeah, yesterday they put out a statement or a couple of days ago, they put out a statement asking Representative Lee to meet with the Muslim community here to, form a better understanding of who they are, how they worship. And Robert actually reached out to him, and he told Robert that his response was, "They can email me anytime." So
Representative Phil Lyman, who's continuing to run for governor as a write-in, he reposted the video apparently.
Right, and he, included a number of xenophobic remarks in his repost, talking essentially saying that these people were, quote, illegal aliens. And he used it to criticize policies of Governor Cox, who he faced in the Republican primary, and now who he's running against as a write-in candidate.
Well, thanks for telling us about these, Emily. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
So Robert, what do you think about this one?
Well, I mean, it's up to over almost 7 million views now. It's really gone viral, and Trevor tries to wash his hands of it, but he didn't do anything to try to control any of the hatred that was that was being posted on his original post either. You know, it's some of the stuff is absolutely unhinged that people have been posting on there, and kind of vile and hateful, and he set the stage for this. And this is, you know, he's made controversial remarks in the past. Um, it's sort of in his modus operandi, I guess, to kind of try to play coy. And you know, one of the people I talked to on this was Dan McClellan, who's a religious scholar who, you know, just isn't buying that Trevor, you know, was innocent in this. He was, you know, Dan is a religious scholar here in Utah, and you know, said he's clearly trying to single these people out, put them in under scrutiny, and that has some consequences, right? That if at a bare minimum, it's othering people, right? It's not accepting them and accepting their right to religious worship and religious observance as they see fit, and in a state that was founded for the purpose of, you know, by a group of people who were chased out of every state they ever had been in before. It's pretty intolerant. So, you know, I'm not too surprised that Phil Lyman piled on, because that's also what Phil does, and he uses every opportunity he can to point the finger and to try to score political points against Spencer Cox, whether or not there's validity to it or, you know, decency. So, you know, this is another example of that.
So Robert, before we go to break, I'd like to have you just tell me very briefly about another story you had. Hundreds rally to oppose amendment undermining ballot initiatives. This was the story from this week. The legislators met in special session, right, in response to a court ruling. Tell me briefly about what this amendment would do.
Yeah, just real quickly, the background is in 2018, you remember we voters passed a ballot initiative that created an independent redistricting commission and prohibited partisan gerrymandering, where political boundaries are drawn to benefit one party to the detriment of the other. Mormon Women for Ethical Government and League of Women Voters sued over that, said that the legislature shouldn't have been able to repeal the voter initiative and pass the boundaries that they ended up passing, the ones that split the state into 4 congressional districts, split Salt Lake County 4 ways as well. The Supreme Court ruled in July that the legislature did overstep its bounds, essentially saying that voters have a constitutional right to pass ballot initiatives. It's in the Constitution, and it becomes meaningless if the legislature can just repeal or amend the constitutions or the ballot initiatives to undo what voters had done. So the legislature last week had a special session on Wednesday where they decided to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that just says, no, the legislature can repeal or amend any ballot initiative that gets passed. That's obviously not sitting well with the proponents of both the Better Boundaries ballot initiative and also just sort of people who support ballot initiatives in general. So the rally on Monday was the kickoff of it was on Monday. It was the kickoff for the opposition campaign. Better Boundaries obviously is part of it. Mormon Women for Ethical Government were there. Former Chief Justice Christine Durham was there to kind of walk through some of the legal aspects. Senator Daniel Thatcher spoke. He was one of 2 Republican senators who voted against this. And so, you know, ultimately, I think this is probably the most important thing for listeners to take away, is that it's going to be up to voters in November to decide whether or not the legislature has this power. I mean, if you listen to Better Boundaries, they're calling it a power grab. If you're listening to the legislature, they say that they need the flexibility that comes with being able to appeal or repeal or amend these ballot initiatives. So this will be on voters' plates in November. There's probably going to be a pretty prominent campaign both for and against over the next 67 days, I think we've got now. So you know, voters should get up to speed on that and make up their minds in how they want to vote.
All right, thank you, Robert Gerke. There, we'll head toward a break now. You're listening to Behind the Headlines, the weekly news roundup from Utah Public Radio and the Salt Lake Tribune. Following a break, we'll bring in education reporter Carmen Nesbitt. Here's the headline: Utah students could soon be prohibited from using smartphones during the school day. We'll have more following this. You're listening to Behind the Headlines, the weekly news roundup from Utah Public Radio and the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm Tom Williams. Today I'm broadcasting from the USU campus in Moab. Later in this hour, we'll have Moab Times independent reporter Andrew Christiansen with us. Right now in the segment, we bring in Salt Lake Tribune education reporter Carmen Nesbitt. Carmen, thanks so much.
Of course, Tom.
So we want to talk about this interesting story. Here's the headline: Utah students could soon be prohibited from using smartphones during the school day. I guess this would come from Utah lawmakers. What are they saying might be coming down the pike?
Yeah, so basically, it flips the baseline that's in law right now. So currently, there is no prohibition on cell phone use or smart device use in schools during the school day, and that's kind of left up to individual school districts and charter schools to decide if they want to, impose a prohibition. But if this bill passes and becomes law, what it would do is create a prohibition baseline where all phones and smart device use is prohibited during the school day, and districts would have to develop their own policies if they wanted to allow cell phone use during the day. And that could look anything like, just allowing students to use them in between classes or just at lunchtime. It would really depend on the policy.
So what are the reasons they're saying? Distraction, I guess. What, social media? What are the reasons?
Yeah, kind of, in the education space, if you hear from teachers, anyone that works in a school, what you'll hear is like behaviors in the last 5 years or so have just gotten so much worse, and that is partially due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, but also there's a lot of research now that shows social media use, especially among youth, is really detrimental to their mental health, their ability to focus, and kind of lead a successful life in a lot of ways. And so this is one of many Utah initiatives to crack down on social media use for kids.
So you write in your story, Granger High School is an early adopter. They did a complete ban. What's been happening there? Do they feel it's been going well?
Yeah, they do. At the time I was there, they were 9 days into the school year, and I got to kind of be there as at the end of the school day when these kids were leaving. And what they did was they had these little pouches. I can't, what was the name of those pouches? Yonder pouch. And they got to carry these pouches with them all day. At the beginning of the school day, they put their phones in them, and then they were locked. And at the end of the day, they went to like outside, there was staff standing with these little like unlocking devices, and they just tapped the pouch on them and they were able to get their phones out. And district officials and school officials said it's going really well. And I think one of the comments that stood out to me was the principal of Granger High saying, his name is Tyler Howe. He said that it was lunch period and he noticed it was louder than he was used to, and it clicked with him that, oh, these kids are talking, they're interacting with each other, they're not face down in their phones.
And I think the teachers were saying they were getting more done in the day, fewer distractions.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how to quantify that just yet, but that is some of the feedback the Principal Howe had gotten from teachers, that, wow, we're getting through lessons really fast.
So do we know? So, I mean, it's being used. See, is it likely this would be happen? Does it have to be the legislature that would mandate this?
Correct. Yeah. It's an initiative kind of being pushed right now by Lincoln Fillmore, and yeah, I would just have to go through the process in the general session, and the Policy Project, which is a nonprofit here in Utah, they're supporting this bill, and they're trying to help raise the roughly 3.5 million to get this bill passed and support schools and districts, uh because they might need more staff to manage this. They might need those pouches. They might need systems to kind of lock the phones away during the day. And the Policy Project is hoping to raise about 1 million of that 3.5 million.
So some parents apparently are concerned. What about an emergency? What if I need to contact my child? What if my child's device is locked in this yonder pouch? What are the district saying?
Yeah, so two things there. So districts can develop policies, right, that would allow cell phone use in those cases. The other thing is, I'm old enough to have not had a cell phone during my entire school career, and parents might just have to call the office, and the office can notify the students, and kind of like how they did in the old days. So that's kind of the answer there. Districts would have to create some exceptions. And if they don't, then I guess we're just going back to how it was before cell phones.
Yeah. I remember those days as well. Thanks, Carmen. Appreciate it. So Robert Gerke, what do you think about this story?
I mean, thinking back to, like Carmen said, when I was a youngster and in school, I don't think I would have taken too kindly to this. I feel like, young people want to be treated with some respect, but it also, they are a distraction. I've heard that from teachers countless times, and the students are there to learn, not to text and snap and all of that. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and we've seen, we should, I think it's probably beneficial for students, frankly, to unplug for a few hours a day, right, and not be constantly online and digital. The emergency thing, I think, potentially could be a problem. I'm not exactly sure how they get around that, but the contacting the students, we know how that's done in the past, and you just contact the office and they contact the student. It's pretty simple. So I think this is the direction we're going, and I think it's probably ultimately going to be beneficial for the educational environment and for a learning environment. And so and in the pouches, I don't know, any big concert you go to these days, they oftentimes make you lock your phone away so people aren't taking video and whatnot. It's probably good. It restores some balance to these students' lives, so they're not constantly digital and online, and helps the educational climate. So I think it's probably a smart move, and we'll see how it plays out and what the results are.
Well, it's time now for the underplayed stories of the week. We usually have this at the end of the program. We're going to take a break shortly, and after that, I'll be joined here in the USU Moab Center by Moab Times independent reporter Andrew Christiansen. So I want to do underplayed stories of the week right now. Let's start with Emily Anderson-Stern. What's your underplayed story of the week?
Mine is one from Julie Jag earlier this week about a former Utah Wildlife Board member facing felony charges for allegedly baiting big game. And he's also a Kane County commissioner, so a little bit of some government and politics ties there. But it's an interesting story.
All right, sltrib.com to find that one. Carmen Nesbitt, what's your underplayed story of the week?
Okay, I'm gonna plug one of my stories actually, but I do think I think it's really important. So there's another constitutional amendment coming to ballots, and it's going to change how lawmakers can spend Utahns income tax dollars, and it has some implications for public education spending. And I just think it's very complicated. There are even some answers to questions about how this will impact public education funding that we don't even have yet. But I just think it's so important to be educated on it before voting. So give it a read. It's for sure not the most thrilling thing ever, but definitely information that everyone should have.
Yeah, I concur. That's I was going to mention that as well. Definitely worth the read. You're going to be voting on this in November, so get up to speed on this. Carmen has all the ins and outs for you, sltrib.com. Robert Gerke, what's your underplayed story of the week?
I was also going to mention Carmen, so I concur with
All
that.
right.
I'll mention one that just posted this morning that Aaron Falk did. There was the Timpview Provo football game, high school football game that was supposed to be played tonight. It has been canceled because of threats against the coaches and players. We talked about this on the program in the past, just sort of the vitriol and the nastiness that pervades even down to high school sports now, and it's unfortunate, but you can find out a little bit more about it at sltrib.com.
Okay, thank you. And we've been talking with, from the Salt Lake Tribune, State Watch reporter Emily Anderson-Stern. Emily, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Education reporter Carmen Nesbitt, thanks for coming on.
Of course, thanks.
Thank you. And Robert Gerke providing commentary. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
You too. We'll say goodbye to these folks. And after the break, with me here in the conference room at the USU Moab campus is Moab Times independent reporter Andrew Christiansen. We'll be talking about some of the big stories here in Moab. That's following a break. You're listening to Behind the Headlines, the weekly news roundup from Utah Public Radio and the Salt Lake Tribune. You're listening to Behind the Headlines, the weekly news roundup from Utah Public Radio and the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm Tom Williams. Today, I'm broadcasting from Moab. We're at the USU campus in Moab. And now we bring in Moab Times independent reporter Andrew Christiansen. Andrew, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Is it Christiansen?
Yes, Christiansen.
Okay, I got it right. Yes, I've known some Christiansens. In my family tree, there's some Christiansens, so
Right.
slightly different. And I understand Moab Times Independent is part of the Tribune family these days, so this all fits in.
Yes.
On Behind the Headlines. Since we're in Moab, we want to know what's going on in Moab. People around the state would be interested. Now, I think people will have heard there's been flooding.
Yeah, it's very bad flooding for sure.
So this seems to be happening every year of the past couple of years, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, since that, in 2022, there was a really bad flood. And then last year, there wasn't any major floods. But this year, we've already seen kind of 3 floods that have all been fairly bad. And I think this last one was probably the worst of them. So,
yeah. Now, this, I understand, is not the Colorado River. It's creeks.
Yeah.
Near
So
town or
mainly
in town.
It's Mill Creek. And then that turned into Pack Creek as well. That's the major source of water that's leading to these floods.
Now, as I'm reading from your reporting from the Times Independent, my understanding is there's a lot of debris, uprooted trees, and then those get stuck against bridges.
Yeah. That's I mean, there's so much damage that is accrued from this last flood, but that's a huge source of it is literal trees being uprooted and, going down the river through just these massive floodwaters and getting stuck in bridges and creating massive damages to these bridges that are too small. So
now the city managers are saying it could be tens of millions of dollars. We're a small town, they say. So I think they're looking for what, the state, the Fed, government.
Yeah, and to be clear with that tens of millions of dollars, I mean, there's a lot of repairs that need to be done to get the city back to normal, but also what's included in that is future, more long-term projects to mitigate flood impact in the future, because obviously this is something that's happening a lot more than it has in the past. But yeah, I don't think Moab can front the cost of something like that expensive. So that's something that the city has been very clear about in the last week that they're going to try to get funds through state and then also federally as well. And I know that there's already talks with representatives and senators in Utah representatives and senators in Congress as far as how to attain those. But yeah, there's some serious projects ahead. So.
I'm seeing some of the pictures here, not only, high creek flows impacting bridges, but some water running down some streets, I guess.
Yeah, just kind of veering off the actual creek pathway. And I think, I mean, I'm not a flood expert, but I think part of that is just purely how quick and high the flooding has or the water has been. And just to kind of quantify that a little bit, it was measured this last flood, the creek water to be at 6,610 cubic feet per second, which is an incredible amount. And for context, usually the creek is around 2.6 CFS. So I think that's part of what's led to, veering off of the way and just creating so much damage and havoc.
Yeah, it's quite the deal. I guess subsided a bit now, I guess, a few days later.
Yeah, definitely. But there is, there is a lot of damage to, they're still in the process of assessing, but I guess just to go into some of the main damages, I mentioned the bridges before. So 300 South Bridge was heavily impacted due to largely to the debris that kind of piled up there. There was a dam, power dam up at Mill Creek Canyon that was breached, and that was also partially due to extensive debris. And then also just pedestrian bridges and pathways along Mill Creek have been damaged heavily, and even some of the city's underground electrical and utility lines were severed. So there is countless damages, and I think they're still in the process of really understanding how bad it is.
I'm reading in your story, the reporting here in the Times Independent, that you're encouraged to report your volunteer hours because apparently that'll get the city more money down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I think with any sort of event like this that is so unique, unfortunately not as unique in this year, but the community has to come together and help out, and especially just how the flooding happens with a creek that goes right through the middle of Moab. There's a lot of private properties that are affected too. So it's not just these city infrastructures that need help repairing and cleaning up and all of that. It's also private properties as well. So
Sandbags available, I guess. Maybe not needed right now, but city's trying to get out the word that should this happen again.
They usually do that with these major flood events and make them very much available to everyone, and in preparation for whenever the next one hits too.
Yeah. I guess another one could happen. We get thunderstorms, and the meteorologist was calling this a train event, right? Storm after storm after storm, like a train.
Yeah. No, that's something that was really interesting. That's what caused, from what I understand, such a big storm, is because there was, like you said, essentially several storms hitting at once. And the level of rain that fell, I don't think I mentioned this before, was I think 0.75 inches, which is almost the same amount as the average amount that Moab sees in the whole month of August, but all at once in a concentrated amount of time. So I think that's part of the reason that caused so much damage so quickly.
Anything else to say about the flooding?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it earlier on, but this is happening very frequently. I've actually only lived in Moab for a few months, and in that time there has been 3 major flood events, right? And not just any flood events that are some of the worst in Moab's history. So I think there's a larger concern here for the community and the city and Grand County in general, which was, and it wasn't just Moab, it was all of Grand County that was hit by these floods and storms. So I think the onus is on the city and whoever they can collaborate with to actually try to invest in these longer term projects to as far as flood mitigation and preventing damage in the future.
If you just joined us, you're listening to Behind the Headlines. I'm Tom Williams, broadcasting today from the USU campus in Moab. We have with us Moab Times Independent reporter Andrew Christiansen. Before we go to the next story, Andrew, you mentioned just Moab for a few months. Where'd you come in from?
Yeah, just from Salt Lake, so not,
Okay.
not too far. I've,
Gotcha.
Visited Moab growing up, but
Yeah.
I moved down here a few months after graduating from the University of Utah. So.
All right. Now you're living here. So Well, that's great. And I want to comment on your shirt. Public radio nerd is what it says.
Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, no problem. I got
appreciate
it when
that,
I
yeah.
was an intern at KBR, so
All
I
right,
thought it was
very
I thought
good.
it was fitting for this occasion.
Okay, very good. Well, I want to turn to the next story. There's a big planning process currently in Moab, and I was very interested reading your story, Andrew. So tell us, give us an overall. What is this planning process called? And then we'll hit the three main areas that they're wanting to plan for, I guess.
Yeah, it's I mean, as I mentioned in the story, it's a very expansive plan, and it covers so many different topics. But yeah, it's called the Trail to Tomorrow Strategic Plan, and it's basically a comprehensive initiative developed to guide the economic and tourism development of Grand County over the next 5 years. And the plan, it's been in the works for about a year now, and has included a lot of community input as what are the most important issues, how do we want to develop the economy, and then I guess also make sure that it's this plan enhances the quality of life for residents, and of course preserving the area's natural and cultural resources as well.
So the first big area of this, addressing the fundamentals, is what they were calling it, and this is all about housing, apparently affordable housing, which I mean it's a problem everywhere, but especially in Moab.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would come as no surprise to anyone in the state or even in the country that that's the number one thing. You can talk about all these different plans that we'll get into or different things that they could explore as far as growing the economy, but if you don't have affordable housing and you don't have the ability to get people to move here because they can't afford to, then none of that really matters in the end. So yeah, one of the things they suggested is hiring an expert to develop worker housing and increase buildable land, some kind of just to centralize the efforts, I guess, and organize with other organizations and entities in the county to make sure that affordable housing is actually being built.
So I understand from your story, I guess this is Grand County, I suppose. I guess we're talking about only 5% is private land.
Yeah,
Real squeeze on housing, I guess.
No, definitely, and that's a statistic I didn't know, but you assume obviously there's the national parks and all sorts of other land, but I think that's a pretty damning number that tells you that just a big challenge that maybe other places don't face is that there's just not enough land to actually be able to develop on, and that makes it more difficult.
So the second pillar here in the strategic plan, growing tourism adjacent businesses. What are they talking about here?
Yeah, so it's a whole range of things. I think that first pillar, focused a lot on affordable housing, but this, some of the things they mentioned is offering tax incentives and creating networking opportunities for outdoor recreation businesses. They also, I guess, relevant to this campus, they talked about exploring developing a search and rescue training center with Utah State University at the Moab campus. To kind of make it a state-of-the-arts place to come and learn about search and rescue, because obviously this is a environment where that's very much needed with how many tourists that come in and how many different recreational activities and people get themselves in hard situations. And then another thing that they mentioned is supporting the arts and culture more in Moab. I mean, I think it's already sort of a hub, but I guess just really keen into that and maybe even building potential new venues and places for artists throughout the county. And then the last thing, which I found interesting, is kind of building the wedding economy more.
Yeah, it stood out to me too.
Yeah.
So there's a wedding economy here.
Yeah,
I guess beautiful scenery, backdrops for.
I mean, I think that's
pictures,
the
yeah.
main
Mhm.
that's the main part of it, right? It's like you already have this built-in, beautiful places to have weddings, but then I think some of the arguments were is like Grand County could really, I guess, prioritize being able to provide everything as far as catering or photographers or in anything that goes into a wedding and really trying to hone in on that. So
Interesting, yeah. So the last pillar here in this plan, engineering tourism to enhance community well-being. So they want to identify the optimal visitor. Who's the optimal visitor?
it depends on who you ask. I would say, yeah, I think that's that's really a difficult thing because I think broadly in Grand County there's a lot of conflict between different user groups, right? So whether that's mountain bikers or OHV users or hikers or people on the river, so they all have their different needs and wants. But I think a big priority from a lot of people in Grand County is we want tourists that obviously help the economy a lot, but are also maybe falling into the line of sustainable tourism and responsible recreation and that sort of thing, and making sure that we're providing that experience, but also getting the right types of tourists that we want to come back to this town.
So where are they in this process? Is it ongoing?
Yeah, so
where are they?
this, like I said, they've been working on this plan for a year. So now it's actually complete, but that's really only the first step, obviously. Like there is so much more work to be done. And I think the number one thing that in the near future is working on affordable housing. And I know there's going to be some meetings with the Economic Development Department and different entities, in the county to think about, okay, what can we do and how can we actually go forward with this and implement some of these things? Because right now it's still a lot of kind of big ideas and not some of them are, but not all are like actionable items, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very important, in any community, especially a community like Moab. It's a lot of visitation, how to manage that. So just about a minute left. Tell me about another fun story you had, Moab Backyard Theater. Give me your 1 minute version of that.
Yeah. I think as a more lighthearted and less I guess just kind of big, far-reaching story. I did a little feature on the Backyard Theater, which is this outdoor music venue that is free and open to all. You bring your family in, you can bring food and drinks in, and they do weekly bluegrass shows and country shows on Thursday nights and bluegrass on Wednesday nights, and then a weekly magic show as well. But yeah, it was fun to take a turn, away from flooding and big strategic plans and state audits and stuff like that to focus on just a really important place in the community where people can just enjoy music and everyone's welcome. And I've found pretty early on in living here that there's a great arts and culture community. I think that's a central part of it.
One example, Moab Music Festival. We'll be talking about that in the next hour here. So I guess just a parting shot, Andrew. Now you're a resident. Are you when you're not reporting, you're out on the river? What are you doing?
I haven't been on the river yet.
Okay.
But I've been requested to be on the river many times. But yeah, I'm more of a hiker myself.
Hiker,
and,
yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's been really hot these last few months, but we're getting into the kind of the peak season and the best temperature. So yeah, I'll definitely be exploring more of the outdoors and just through my stories, even just figuring out more about Moab's community and all the people that live in it. So.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in. We've been talking with Moab Times independent reporter Andrew Christiansen. You've been listening to Behind the Headlines, the weekly news roundup from Utah Public Radio, the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm broadcasting from the USU campus in Moab. You're welcome to come on down. We have a special edition of Access Utah coming up next. We have a meet and greet event at 11 as well, all here at the USU Moab campus. Andrew, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And thanks everyone for listening to Behind the Headlines.